Hey there, superstar. I'm here with my friend and colleague, Phil M. Jones. He's the author of the book, Exactly What to Say, which has sold 1.4 million copies worldwide. All right, we're wrapping up this conversation that is so good. Let's go, Phil. What else do you have to say about this topic?
Final question from me to you on this is, what's the off-ramp? And what I mean by that is that, you're creating a culture. It started this big and it gets this big, and then there's more people and then there's more vision, and then we're going here, etc. And where does this then provide exit, or where does there become a point where you bless release, or how, if you want to retire at some point, how does that actually become a reality?
Well, I can only share with you what my vision is in this moment, knowing that as we evolve, we talked about this at lunch, as we evolve, our desires evolve and the vision evolves, right? But what I see for myself and what I see as a possibility for a lot of people like us is some sort of certification, some sort of packaging it so that other people can take the work forward, take the torch, the baton, and pass it forward. So that's what I'm looking at for myself. I don't even know exactly what I would be certifying in just yet, but I'm looking at it, and it's looking like, 2024 to 2025 feels like the time frame for that. And then the second piece is some sort of global, I think, membership community. So something, because I get people because of this YouTube channel all over the world that I'm not serving, and I'd love to add value to. So some sort of membership community that other people, these certified people, could go and lead with me or for me.
And I think that's the evolution, right? You just said something very specifically that I'm not serving. The next level gets unlocked when you change that to are not being served.
Exactly.
And that you care passionately about the fact that
they get served.
You've maxed your capacity. These people need to be served. I need to build something that is bigger than self that can continue this act of service.
And that's the amplification piece that we were just talking about. It's in partnership that happens.
Right. And I guess that's the only off-ramp for any speaking business, right? Is to be able to create something that's bigger than self, take everything you've built and held so dear, and give it away so that other mission-driven messengers can carry it into the world without necessarily needing any of that light shining back on yourself because you're full. And
speaking of our conversation earlier about model, that's what you're doing.
That's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm working on right now.
You're doing it right now. Like that's what you're creating, certified.
We have certified guides. They're certified not in Phil Jones' work. They're certified in Exactly What to Say. The goal is that they carry that brand forward. They're helping to crowdsource the evolution of how content changes within that. And they're having permission to stand in front of the brand as opposed to behind it. And that has always been my intention, is I want them to make my stuff better, not to police their ability to deliver my stuff.
And that is a big thing. I see a lot of people doing, as they move into certification. It's like, how do I manage? How do I control my brand? This is a whole different context and a whole different way you're holding that.
Hugely different. And I think if I'm just to make a prediction, given I know this interview is going to come to the world at some point soon, is my prediction is that the individual personal brand, mentor, guru, coach, consultant, mynameoverthedoor.com positioning is a prehistoric success model, because as we've learned through recent years, etc., no one individual is perfect. Nobody should hold that amount of responsibility. That if we look for any one individual to be our beacon of light, when you find that they're not what you wrote in your own head that they are, you end up disappointed. Whereas if you can create something that is bigger and bigger and bigger than that, it can be beautifully imperfect and it can carry the distance without creating disciples or creating a tribe or creating a cult. What you've done is you've created
a culture, not a cult.
That's right. An elevated consciousness around it that doesn't need you for it to grow.
Yeah, and I think that an interesting thing, the last thing I think we'll say on this topic perhaps, is that in order to get started, it is about sometimes your personal brand. Right? And I remember my first 8 years in business was Villalobos.com. And then I had that aha moment that's not about me. It's about activating other superstars. Hence Superstar Activator. Same with you. You were the guy everybody wanted. You wrote the book, and now it's about exactly what to say, not about Phil M. Jones.
And I think the lesson in all of that is that our job to be able to create continued growth in this type of business is the ability to reinvent on repeat and to understand your positioning needs to continually change. So your positioning as a personal brand might be the right thing to get started. There might be a positioning ahead of that you need just for posture, that you're called some form of name, training brand, etc. Where you know inside it's just
Myers-Briggs. That's how I got started.
Right. And you might need actually some form of vehicle to give you credibility, but you're not searching for credibility, you're searching for positioning.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we should always be looking to better shape towards, is that as you grow, accept that the position you had is not the position you will need forever, and that you have to keep giving birth to new versions.
Well, let's go there, actually. I don't want to leave this just yet, because, I mean, I've found for myself that it sometimes in the past, maybe in the present, has been challenging to let go.
Yep.
Of the old version. Have you ever had that experience?
Oh, yes. And I have a quote that echoes in my head. It was shared with me by a speaker friend of mine in a mastermind group maybe over a decade ago. And the quote he shared, and I forget who said it, so hopefully we can attribute it properly in the notes. But it was to remember to say no to the good so you can say yes to the great. And you have to create space, right? So stuff has to be able to be let go. And what I've strategized on from there and then templated as an operating system for my life is that I'm always working two businesses.
Okay.
One is the business I'm running,
and
the other is the business I'm growing.
Okay.
Now, what often happens is the business you're growing becomes the business you're running.
And then again,
and
then
then
again,
you actually
and
have
then
to
again.
keep repeating this on a cycle. And a best example of that, even in the real world, is the big business we all know, which is Amazon, right?
Yeah.
It started as a books business, and then it started growing an alternative ebooks or an audiobooks business, and then it started saying, well, we could probably take this software and we could run it into different avenues. And they've done this business you're running, business you're growing, business you're running, business you're growing, and now they're in the business of everything.
Yeah.
But they didn't do that to say we went from a books business to an everything business.
No. And nor did they start out as a small everything business.
No.
Right? Which is something you've mentioned Rory Vaden, and Rory and AJ talk about penetrating Sheehan's wall, which is having that narrow enough focus to bust through that initial wall of anonymity and get on the other side of the wall. And that, at which point, like you're there now, you can start to bring many
go wide
things.
Again.
Yeah. You can go wide.
I use the Swiss Army knife analogy, right? If you wanted to open a can of beans, you want a can opener, not a Swiss Army knife. And you might have the ability to do all these other things, but in a time of need or a time of crisis, you're going to get found for your expertise, not because of your name brand recognition. And that means that you have to get clear on how do you help with that thing, and then once you get in, you can say, hey, there's a ton of other stuff I can do as well.
And be willing to let go of what got you there.
Yeah. And let go of your ego is a big mistake I see in the personal brand business as a whole is people want too much of the pie. So they'll show up in a corporation and they want everything to be about them, forgetting the fact that now you just created your own hostile pack back against you because you're trying to have an opinion in too many different areas.
And now you're competing with people that you could be colleagues with.
Correct. And those were mistakes I made through early consulting business as well. Is like early consulting relationships is, I wanted to be too much of a big deal in there. I wanted to be able to have my hands on too many of the things that could be changed. And the ability to stay in lane, stay in role, not tread too far outside of that is a big thing. And even with my little book, Exactly What to Say, is I was sharing a really high level mastermind group the other day. Is my strategy for success in this business is I want to be like hot sauce. I want to be like Tabasco. Is that I want my work to be a tiny little thing that's on the side of everybody's main table, but nobody really even pays attention to it being there. So I don't want to be the entree, don't want to be the appetizer, don't want to be the dessert. I want to be hot sauce. And I think what that allows a level of sustainability and scalability. And my goal is that the worst thing that could happen in my world is that I become famous. I don't want to be famous, but I would like the book Exactly What to Say and the body of work to it to reach a level of fame, but not excitable fame, ever-present fame. So, well, it's just there. It just exists. Never stealing any of the limelight. Just always being present and always being useful in organizations, relationships, all these different sectors. Just a useful tool.
I love it. Be the hot sauce. It goes with everything.
That's it.
Sprinkle, dab with everything.
That's it. And
there's a lot of hot sauce.
And even if you don't like it, you still have it, right?
You always have to have it, right? Absolutely. If you enjoyed this video, then I would recommend checking out the National Speakers Association. Phil and I are both members. We're diehard members. We love it. And these are the kinds of conversations that happen there. So you can go to nsaspeaker.org and maybe we'll see you at an upcoming event.
That. Would love that. Hopefully we'll see you there. Proud of our association, and it's where I've learned at least 2/3 of everything that I can now be able to practice as experience through my professional speaking business.
See you there. So what we're talking about here, just to be clear, is how to sell 1 million books.
Yeah.
You want to go big. And maybe if you're doing something very narrow and focused, it's to sell $1 million from the programs on the backside of the book.
Well, you probably don't want a book.
Right.
It probably doesn't need to live in a book, right?
Okay.
If this is a tool that could be of value towards showcasing your expertise to 13 people, don't go through the effort of creating a book.
Okay.